Right now, the federal government continues to slash funding. Find out how it could impact America's 25th birthday next year. Also, another round of rebate checks will be coming soon for Georgia taxpayers. We'll examine how much of an impact they'll make as the state's tax filing deadline approaches. And all that driving around Atlanta can do a number on your vehicle. Find out how rough it is to motor around the metro. This is The Take. Let's get it. Hello and welcome. I'm Chesley McNeil, and this is The Take, where we go above and beyond the headlines and we look at the why and how stories are impacting you and your community. We have experts that come on and they share their opinion, or their take at least, on today's top stories, and we try to have a little bit of fun as well. Well, today, new battles emerging over federal funding. This week, the Trump administration plans to send a request to Congress to rescind $1.1 billion for public broadcasting. If approved, that could eliminate almost all federal funding for NPR and PBS. Meanwhile, Harvard University was hit with a $2 billion funding freeze after rejecting demands from the Trump administration that could make sweeping changes. The school received a letter sent by multiple federal agencies late Friday calling for Harvard to change everything from admissions to hiring practices to academic programs. And now plans to commemorate the nation's 250th anniversary next year could be at risk as it's significantly scaled back, if not canceled, or the federal funding is completely cut altogether. Joining us now is Mary Wern. She is the president of Georgia Humanities. Welcome to the show, Mary.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's talk about the special, how special it is for America to celebrate 250 years, its 250th birthday. How large is this undertaking, first of all?
Well, I think it's very important across the country, but particularly to the state of Georgia. It's an original colony, and the fact that we had plans in place to really take this for a moment of reflection, to contemplate where we've been as a country and where we want to go as a country moving forward. So I think it was really set up to be a moment for contemplation and commemoration. And unfortunately, the plans that we had at Georgia Humanities to develop programming is at risk, and I don't know if we'll be able to move forward.
Wow. How much are we talking about when we talk about cuts? How much are we looking at?
Well, our budget was cut, and when I say cut, it was cut immediately. We had access to $740,000 for the first 6 months of the year, and we were anticipating another $633,000 for the remainder of the year. And we get our budgets year by year, so in terms of planning for the next year, we were going to get a whole nother budget. We were anticipating over $1 million for that.
Wow. Talk to us about how much of that money is planned for, or what are you planning that money for?
Well, in terms of the 250th, we had quite a lineup. We were going to have a speakers bureau so that local communities could have speakers come and talk in their communities about historical events and also looking into the future. We had planned on, in addition to a speaker bureau, having a grants program so that communities could come to us for funding for their celebrations. It's very unlikely we're going to be able to do that. We were working with Georgia Public Library Service to develop a digital book initiative so that there would be sort of a reading club, a digital reading club with speakers coming in across the state. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. And probably the biggest event that we were looking at, that we were really looking forward to, was bringing in Smithsonian's Museum on Main Street. Mm-hmm. There is an exhibit called Voices and Votes, Democracy in America, and we were going to take that beautiful Smithsonian exhibit to 6 rural communities across the state of Georgia to commemorate and celebrate the 250th. And that's in jeopardy and unlikely to happen at this point.
Wow. Was this a shock to you guys, or did you get some early warning that this may be coming down the pipe?
Well, we knew there was a new administration. We knew there was likely to be changes. We did not expect for our budget to be entirely cut. And it really puts us in a bind because the way the budget works, we basically get refunded for the work that we do rather than having the money in a bank account somewhere. So things that we've paid for, we don't have federal funding for anymore. We have a very big event coming up on April 26th. We have the Georgia History Day, National History Day, Georgia, in LaGrange. And that programming was put in place a long time ago, but now we don't have any federal funds to fund that. We're going to have to eat into our reserves to fund that. So it's very upsetting because the things we have planned we no longer have federal funding for those things.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, does it change anything that you currently do? And you had mentioned that right there. How is there any way that the public can help you out with this?
Well, certainly we're looking to philanthropy to help us. We're looking to the public for citizens to contact their legislators. We've been in contact with all of our legislators, but if you care about the programming that we do, and we do so much specifically for K-12, but also programming across the state in the humanities, we fund grants, we fund all kinds of programming. If you care about those things, you really want to reach out to your legislators and let them know how much you care about those things and that you don't want them to go away. Yeah. We feel that our work really connects people across the state in a time when our communities are sometimes polarized. We are a connector. We're the ones who get people talking in a civic and civilized manner and get people civically engaged. And with us not being there to make those connections, I really think it's going to hurt the state of Georgia.
Wow. Mary Warren, President of Georgia Humanities, really appreciate you coming on and sharing us that insight with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. The New York Times reports that some of the canceled humanity grants will go to help pay for President Trump's planned Garden of Heroes, which he pushed during his first term as president. Other stories that we're tracking on this Wednesday: a long-term South Fulton police officer killed when a driver hit his police cruiser head on. The department shared a photo of Lieutenant Elio Garcia this morning. Police Chief Keith Meadows says Lieutenant Garcia leaves behind a wife and 3 kids. The accident happened along Flat Shoals Road and Cornell Road. Investigators say Garcia was on duty driving his police car when another vehicle veered into his lane and hit him head on. He was taken to the hospital where he later died. The woman driving the other vehicle is at a local hospital. Police say they have not ruled out alcohol as a factor. Today, a new era begins in Atlanta's Sweet Auburn district as a new $37 million co-living community gets unveiled. The community will feature 33 dormitory-style units and with 67 beds. The fully furnished apartments are designed for students and young professionals. They will include utilities and start about $1,400 per room. The ribbon cutting ceremony is set for 3:30 this afternoon on Auburn Avenue, celebrating the district's first major development in nearly 20 years. All right, let's take a look at our forecast for today, and it shows temperatures getting up to around 70 degrees. We were just there just yesterday, right? We were just there, and now we're going to see it feel a little bit better because the winds will have died down a little bit. We'll have sunshine all day long, and so it's going to feel a little bit better. Getting better for tomorrow, 77 degrees for your afternoon high, partly to mostly sunny skies. We'll hold it right there for Friday and Saturday, but our temperature will continuously go up. 83 on Good Friday, 86 on Saturday. Easter Sunday, 64 degree start, so it'll be comfortable for your sunrise services. 87 degrees for the afternoon high. That'll be mighty warm, and then we'll stay in the 80s as we head into next week as our rain chance starts to go up. All right, we'll be back right after this. Don't go anywhere. The battle over who the Trump administration can deport, who it can't, and what role the federal courts play in the process is really starting to heat up. Joining us now is NBC Washington correspondent Alice Barr, who's been covering politics for years now. And Alice, a federal judge has signaled that they may hold the administration in contempt. How serious is the White House taking this threat?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because that would be civil contempt at this point, essentially that the judge could levy fines against the Trump administration. Criminal contempt would be next to impossible, given that that would require involving the very arms of the government that are being accused in this case in order to bring criminal contempt of court charges. So there's only so far that this federal judge can go in order to enforce the orders that thus far, she said in court yesterday, the Trump administration is doing, quote, nothing to act on to bring this mistakenly deported man back to the U.S.
Wow. Is there any new movement on that, this back and forth on this mistakenly deported situation?
Not exactly. I mean, there is from the judge. So there was this federal judge hearing yesterday where she issued new orders for the Trump administration to turn over evidence of what it's done to abide by her initial ruling to bring Kilmar Abrego Garcia back to the U.S. And she signaled that without action so far, because she said there hasn't been any, that she is now considering this contempt idea. And she said that the government lawyers have 2 weeks to answer her. And she said she was clearly frustrated as she was speaking about this, and she said, you know, you need to cancel vacations or any other appointments if needed in order to meet that new deadline to provide information about what is being done to return Abrego Garcia. And that follows not only her court order, but then the Supreme Court stepping in and saying that the administration must facilitate Abrego Garcia's return to the U.S. That word, again, is one that is sort of in the middle of a legal battle of its own, because the Trump administration is arguing that facilitate is one thing, but that because Abrego Garcia is in El Salvador, in an El Salvador prison, and that he is from El Salvador initially, that it's up to El Salvador as to initiate the release. And then if they did, we heard from Attorney General Pam Bondi, then they would facilitate by supplying a plane, for instance, in order to fly him back to the U.S. So that is still stuck, but the federal judge is really trying to pull any lever she can to force this out of the rut that it's been in and try to move the case forward. Yeah, and now we're hearing that Senator Chris Van Hollen from Maryland is traveling to El Salvador to advocate for Garcia's return. How much of an influence could he have on the process? Yeah, he's attempting to meet directly with the president of El Salvador, and he tried to do that when the president of El Salvador was here and met with President Trump earlier this week. They did not get that meeting here, but he has said that, you know, he's going to do everything that he possibly can and is not going to walk away from this until there's some movement. So he's certainly dedicated to trying to bring this man home. Again, he's a senator from Maryland. The man had been living in Maryland for a number of years. Hard to say how much impact he can have, because President Trump certainly has forged an alliance with the president of El Salvador, and they looked certainly friendly when they were in the Oval Office together. They were kind of marching to the same drum and echoing a lot of each other's talking points. So he seems fairly firmly dug in that position, and interesting to see what Senator Van Hollen may be able to do to shift him from that spot. All right, Alice, really appreciate your insight as always. We'll see you again tomorrow. All right, two pieces of legislation now have Governor Brian Kemp's signature on it. One cuts the state's income tax by a rate of 5.19%, saving Georgians an estimated $880 million. The other will send a one-time tax credit to everyone who filed in Georgia in 2023 and 2024. Those tax cuts could be up to about $500. That would be nice, right? This comes as some Georgians are right now making a mad dash to finish filing their income taxes. Here now joining us is friend of the show, financial advisor Andrew Polos. Welcome to the show, Andrew, again.
Good morning, Chesley.
Good to see you, man. And let's start off with these two new pieces of legislation signed in. What's your take on it?
Look, I'm a proponent for low taxes and giving people their money back, right? This is taxpayer money that Governor Kemp is proposing, or is essentially passing with House Bill 112 to give back to people. So anyone who's single is going to, not anyone, but most people will receive $250. If you're married, it'll be $500. Head of household, meaning a single parent with a dependent, will be $375. But there's parameters you got to meet to qualify. So that's what we all have to keep in mind, that not everyone's going to get money back.
Yeah, anytime you talk about getting money back, everybody starts cheering, right? But is there any downside to getting these rebates?
Well, look, I mean, I would say at this point that some Georgians are struggling. People, you know, food costs could still be high. And so relatively speaking, I'm a fan of giving people their money back versus the government keeping it and spending it. Like Governor Kemp said, you know, that he wants the money back in Georgians' hands. This is the third special refund. And also just want to mention, Chesley, that this refund, anyone who gets it, it's not taxable on your next year's tax return. So keep that in mind when you file your taxes.
So that's a good break, especially with this economy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, $500 for a married couple is $500, right? The government can either spend it on what you think may or may not be appropriate or needed, or you can get the money back and use it more wisely.
And is that, you think, the incentive for people to get this money and then put it right back into the economy? You think that's the hopes?
I think so. Look, if we know how how the pattern works with human behavior, it's very likely that most people are going to put it back into the economy. The average family that may be struggling and may need $250 or $500 is likely to put it right back into the economy, which goes right back into, in some shape or fashion, will go right back into the state coffers.
All right, you've been doing this for a while. We're seeing about a quarter of the people wait until the last minute to file. Why do people wait so long?
Man, let me tell you, this year it's actually just terrible. I mean, the procrastination is incredible. But yeah, if you didn't file yesterday, In Georgia and some of the other states in Southeast, but for us here in Georgia, the deadline is actually May 1st. So those that were rushing yesterday or thought they were missing the deadline, you did miss the deadline. The deadline's May 1st because of the hurricanes that came around last fall. The IRS extended the 2023 tax year, and to coincide, they also extended the 24 tax filing season from April 15th to May 1st. So if you haven't filed your 23 return, it's still timely, so long as you filed an extension last year. If you missed filing an extension yesterday and you didn't file your return, you have till May 1st, or you have till May 1st to file an extension. So you've got to take some action sooner than later.
And that extension is for everybody, not just those that were impacted by the hurricane, right?
That's correct. It's statewide. Unlike other disasters, national disasters, where the IRS would pick and choose which zip codes or which areas, they just did the right thing this time, and they made it all out for the entire state. So for all of us, we all get till May 1st to either file an extension or file our tax return considered timely.
Gotcha. All right, let me get you out of here with this. With this money coming in, and people having to file, making that mad dash to file, is there any 11th hour places where people can maybe help themselves out in filing their taxes?
Yeah, listen, if you are below the income limits, I think it's around 80,000, just going off the top of my head, and you don't have a complicated return, meaning a W-2 is rather simple, you can probably file online with one of the free online software companies. If you have anything more complex, as I always tell everyone, don't rush to file just to file and get a tax return wrong. If you do anything that's going to complicate your return, which means that you may get a letter from the IRS later, you got to keep in mind, with everything going on right now politically, out there in the IRS, staff being cut, personnel being cut down significantly. It's challenging to work with the government, whether you're a licensed professional like myself or whether you're the average taxpayer, right? So don't do anything that's going to get you in trouble where you have to deal with the IRS, because it's going to take a long time to resolve your matters. All
right, gotcha. One more thing, real quick, a fashion tip from you. I'm thinking about switching over to just wearing a vest on the show. Yay or nay from you?
Man, stick with the, I'll say with the nay, stick with the purple. I actually wore your favorite color today, as you can see.
Absolutely, my man. All right, I'm gonna take that in consideration. Andrew Pullis, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it. All right, take care. All right, folks, don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this. Well, look, folks, you just can't avoid it. Getting around in Metro Atlanta means you're likely going to spend time in traffic. And yeah, there's a new breakdown showing how much that traffic is wearing down our vehicles. Yelp has put out the first ever auto report uncovering the 25 toughest cities for car upkeep. It found Atlanta ranked second overall, with Chicago taking the top spot, followed by Philadelphia and Detroit. Joining us now is Tara Lewis, Vice President of Community Expansion and Trends for Yelp. Tara, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, what's behind you guys wanting to do this report?
Well, at Yelp, we know that car ownership is a big part of everyday life for millions of people, whether they're looking to buy a used car or find a trustworthy mechanic, or just dealing with unexpected repairs. We know that drivers are turning to Yelp more than ever to make informed decisions. So for our very first ever auto report, we took a look at key trends we're seeing across the country, everything from the top 25 cities for vehicle upkeep to the 15 most common car problems in the U.S., as well as also releasing a list of our 100 most trusted mechanics on Yelp from across the country.
All right, so I looked at this list, and I got to ask you, is it about traffic, or is it traffic and infrastructure? Because Atlanta is the only southern city in the top 5.
Yeah, well, with sprawling highways and some challenging road conditions, car upkeep can be pretty tough in cities like Atlanta. The city ranked #1 in the country for vehicle overheating searches.
Oh, wow.
It also ranked in the top 10 for searches related to collision repair, bumper replacement, wheel and rim repair, as well as towing services. But that's not the only thing. It's also known for its fresh rides. We noticed that we saw it was number 18 out of 20 in terms of searches for car washes, detailing services, stereo installations, as well as paint services. So yes, upkeep is a big piece of it, but also folks in Atlanta are keeping their rides pretty fresh as well.
Yeah, you also dove into some other areas of this report. Was that the things you were mentioning right there?
I'm sorry, say that again?
The other areas that you dove into as far as this report goes, as far as the upkeep of your car, was that some of the things you mentioned right there as far as what people are searching for?
Yes, in terms of the top 10 toughest cities for upkeep, that was more about the upkeep that's going on, the searches for collision repair, bumper repair, but we also saw folks in Atlanta are really, they care quite a bit about keeping the aesthetics of their car looking great, whether it's an older car or a new car.
That's absolutely right. We got to drive in style around here. Well, are there any surprises in the report?
I think that it was indicative of, I think, what consumers are thinking about right now, with the unknowns related to car costs and upkeeps and potential tariffs on car parts. We saw used car searches are up 60% on Yelp. We also saw that car loan searches were up 17%. So people are thinking about different financing options if they are seeking out a new car. Also, auto mechanic searches in general are up 11%. So those all correlate in terms of folks looking to different ways to invest in their current vehicle. And also, we're on the cusp of road trip season, and people want to make sure that if they're going on vacation, that they are having a car that's safe and reliable to have their vacation.
Does volume play a role in this at all? I do know that here in a southern city like Atlanta, there's a lot of people on the roads driving, where opposed to a city like New York City, which I would think would be the roughest, a lot of people take public transportation. Does that play a role in this study at all?
Well, we based it off of search terms, and so that would correlate and make sense about what people are actually searching. The toughest cities, when you look at the top three for upkeep, Chicago, Atlanta, Philadelphia, I think that those are a little bit heavier when it comes to driving. They have great public transit options as well, but quite a few car owners on that. We did notice that when it comes to fresh rides, there was a little bit more representation across other cities. But yeah, I think that is a correlation why New York would not be on that in terms of searches.
Gotcha. Tara, where do you drive? Where are you from?
I live in D.C. and I also have a car here. And there's a lot of potholes, let me tell you.
But I don't. DC didn't make the list, right? Didn't make the top 20 at least, right?
We didn't, but we also have great public transportation options as well. It's also considered a walkable city, so those are probably other factors that are going into what people are searching.
Have you ever driven in Atlanta before?
I've taken many ride shares and driven with people in Atlanta. I haven't done too much driving in Atlanta myself, but I enjoy the city, and I just appreciate that folks in Atlanta are keeping their car fresh and also being safe on the road as well. Yeah,
and now that we know we make this list, in fact, number 2, we're going to be changing some things, so come check us out in a year or so. We'll be better, all right?
I hope so. Thank you so much.
Tara Lewis, president of the Community Expansion for Entrance for Yelp. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate you.
So much for having me.
All right, don't go anywhere, folks. Back with my final take right after this.
In Atlanta, John Sherrick, 11Alive News. In Plains, John Sherrick, 11Alive News. At Atlanta Police Headquarters, John Sherrick, 11Alive News.
Before we go, we want to take a moment to remember the life of our friend, a beloved member of the 11Alive family, John Sherrick, longtime reporter here. He died Monday after a battle with brain cancer. John was a friend to all, and he had been with our 11Alive team for over 40 years. John joined 11Alive in 1980. He had covered some of the biggest stories across the metro for over the decades. Before his retirement last year, he eloquently and sensitively covered the passing of Rosalind Carter. His sharp skills walked us through the Fulton County ransom attack and attempt of arson at Dr. Martin Luther King's birth home. John was known for his powerful storytelling, his deep compassion, and that voice. Who can forget that voice? He was a true mentor to many of us. His legacy lives on through every journalist that he helped and ever told a story to. John was a gentle giant here in the newsroom, and when I first met him, I thought he was so serious, but he always had words of encouragement, really encouraged a lot of us. He will be deeply missed. And to his family, we're praying with you and for you. May he rest in peace. Have a great day, everyone.